My first guest today is Ross Scott of Accursed Farms. Ross is a very popular YouTuber. I think he has well over 300,000 subscribers, and he's best known for the series Freeman's Mind, where he provides a very funny stream of consciousness voiceover for the silent protagonist from the first-person game Half-Life. Ross also made several 3D shorts animated with computer game graphics. I think he has some more coming up. And he hosts the YouTube series Ross's Game Dungeon, where he explores and he gives his thoughts on various video games, including a really entertaining and informative review of Phantas 2 back in 2019. I'm going to show you a short clip from that video right now. I hope this all works. Let's see.
Here's the boss's office. In all honesty, I imagine most successful managers have repressed urges to kill things. So if anything, it's probably better for everyone he gets it all out in the open like this. Let's go through his stuff. Oh, he's here.
Hello, Curtis.
Yeah, I just work here.
Word 8, man.
Bye.
Goodbye now.
So I guess we should actually work.
Oh crap, I changed my password.
Uh-oh, guess my password.
Damn, what was it?
It's Blob. The password's Blob.
You're such a pretty girl, Blob.
Boy, doesn't that remind you of the 90s? You could get away with a 4-character password being the name of your pet and it being clearly labeled right next to your monitor. Yeah, those days are gone. Did you know that for 15 years, the launch codes for all the nuclear weapons in the US were 8 zeros? And even that was a really late measure since JFK signed that nukes should be secured from unauthorized use in '62, even though that didn't go into effect until '77. And it wasn't like just one guy knew it was all zeros. It was shared with pretty much all base personnel nationwide. Now in the UK, as late as '97, or, after this game was made, they were just securing the nuke launch controls with bike locks. But back to the game, security really was like this in offices for— oh! Trick or treat, Curtis!
Please, there you go. Hey, Ross.
Oh,
Well, welcome to Conversations with Curtis. How are you?
good. Is the audio good now? I saw
Yeah.
the chat saying it was double.
No, I think we're good. I think we're okay. Were you able to hear? Were you able to hear all that when you were?
Oh, I don't know. I muted that end, so it was fine for me. But so I don't literally hear triple
yeah.
if I've done that. So,
Well, hey, thank you.
thanks. This is great.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hey, so if you does that watching that video clip bring back any memories?
Oh, I guess. I mean, for some reason, I don't really like seeing stuff of. When I'm done with the videos, I almost never watch them again. I've heard actually that some actors, didn't Paul Mitri say this last time? He didn't really like to watch himself.
Most people don't.
What he'd already done. So.
Yeah, it's really hard. You end up just.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess if I was playing an odd character, it'd be more fun. But if it's just me talking, it's like, I don't know. It's something uncomfortable.
Right. No, I get
I'm
it.
glad other people like it.
Well,
It's something in my brain that like, it works while I'm editing, and then once it's done, it just turns off.
yeah,
So,
yeah. What do you well, what strikes me about what strikes me in that clip, and we talked a little bit about this just before we started broadcasting today, is the fun rabbit holes that you like to go down during the review. It seems to me that you're fascinated by the fine details of things, and so what I loved about this was like taking the fact that Curtis forgot, says he forgets his password, and then the progression of how easy passwords were back then versus today, and then thinking, well, what was it like with the government, and then finding this the passwords of the double 8 zeros and stuff.
Yeah, my brain just connects dots on various things. I mean, this has been brought up to me before, and I think I'd have to blame this on me, just general public education, where in school, I really trained myself to just kind of daydream, because if it was a class I wasn't that interested in, my brain would just wander off places. And now, if anything, it's overdeveloped. So I see all kinds of patterns, or this reminds me of this, and which reminds me of this. And there is this actual logic to it, but if I just throw it out there, it's I could see where it might bewilder people, but
Absolutely. No, it's fun. It's really fun. So it's fun. Tell me about tell me about what you remember. Yeah, you made this particular game dungeon review. It was a little over a year ago, I guess now, right?
yeah, it's 1 or 2 years, something like that.
Yeah. What prompted you to choose Phantas 2 during that time?
It was, well, it's one of my all-time favorite games. I mean, when I started making the game dungeon, I knew eventually I'd want to cover that, but it's also a big game, and I wanted to kind of do justice, so I wanted to work up to it. And Halloween was coming up then, so it's perfect for that.
Yeah, it's a perfect timing for that.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
that was a great quote you had earlier about it's not a good game, but it's fascinating. You know, I'd agree with the gameplay. The gameplay, I think, maybe doesn't hold up the test of time, but everything else, I love it.
So what's the difference between, so when you first played, when did you first play it? When's the first time you played the game?
I think it was in '98.
Oh, wow.
It actually worked to my benefit that the game kind of bombed, because that means I was able to get it cheaper than I would have. I probably wouldn't have played it until much later if it hadn't been. I think I got it for $10.
Wow.
When I actually got that. Yeah, I think I was 15 actually when I got it. What happened was my father works as a computer programmer. Every once in a while, he would go to these computer shows where, before internet commerce really took off, that was the best place to get deals on computer parts. That there would just be these computer conventions where they have people be selling a lot of hardware or some games. And I saw that there. I was like, at 5 CDs. I already knew the first. I already knew about the first one and was interested in this. And this $10. Oh, I'm kidding. Like I've been wanting to play the first one, but this was available. So sure. So
yeah, and it's not like you need to play the first. They're so
and
separate.
I guess I got kind of lucky in that this was the equivalent of kind of sneaking into the theater when you're underage.
Yeah,
But I could handle it. I mean, it wasn't giving me nightmares. On the contrary, I found it. I think it was old enough by then to tell the difference between stuff that's more adult, but it's just kind of there for shock value, versus stuff that had more content to it.
yeah.
And it was just hooking me right in. You know,
What was it at first? Like, what was it that grabbed you? Was it the
oh,
there's so many things that I'm learning about this game now after all this time, having sort of put it away for a while. And it really has, to me anyways, it has a lot to do with the identity struggle, you know, and is that something that you think, was it more just like the craziness of the story that was happening?
yeah, that's what's so great about it, is there's a lot in there for people to kind of latch on to different things. I think I was I was generally in the spooky stuff in general, but I think when I was just completely on board was like after the first night, when because you're kind of getting these hints of things happening, and then you see then you arrive at the office and everybody's just in shock. They can't even tell you what's happening, and then you're finding out what's happened to Bob. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And it's that contrast from starting off with this pretty mundane office day, that I really love things that build, that start off slow. And I guess the other, besides the general craziness, I've always been a big fan of the sort of theme of just going off into the unknown. And even though the majority of the game just takes place in an office building, it's loaded with that, where things keep escalating. I keep thinking it's different, but I keep thinking of something like Heart of Darkness, where he's just descending further and further down the river, and you don't know what to expect, and things are getting more wild. And I've always been a huge fan of that kind of storytelling.
Yeah.
And like you said, the craziness of it all. It's like, while there's so many things to latch onto, because there's the murder mystery aspect of it, but then there's Curtis kind of struggling with reality versus what's real or not. And you're not sure either as the viewer. And then he's having all these relationship issues that are just compounding. And then he's having psychological problems, with the therapy sessions. So it's just like, let's just keep adding more and more. It turns into this pressure cooker of things that are going on in his life. So I was just kind of, somebody said fascinated by all this, like, wow. And the game just keeps upping it.
So I have a question. So
it's adding to it.
So when you, as a, again, I'm not a gamer. So and I think that, so for me, I always felt like we were making, a movie of some sort. It just felt, the set felt like a movie, the story, it was a strange way of making it. But as someone playing it as a game, does, again, this particular game in the 90s, they were trying some new stuff. They were, this ultimately didn't take off. But what's it like? I would think that as a gamer, you want more control more often. You want to be able to just go from here to there. And that's where the first person stuff kind of took off. But what's it like having to just be patient and watch scene after scene after scene? Or, is that something that took some time to just settle into?
Well, there's different types of gamers. I mean, before this, you actually had, by the publishing company, Sierra, they had a lot of, I'm not even sure nowadays what the proper term is. Back then they called them graphic adventure games, where they would actually have usually drawn or later painted backgrounds where a character would walk along, and then you have to talk to people and solve puzzles. And the flow of it is actually very similar to Phantasmagoria 2. It's just the Phantasmagoria and games like that, you had actual actors where the past would all be drawn and just text blocks, and then later they would get voice actors as technology progressed. So I've always been okay with either of those.
Gotcha.
However, the thing is with gaming, there's a lot of different types of games where you're absolutely right. Where some gamers just would never have the patience for that. Then, now, whenever.
And I think that's
those
part
other
of it.
types of games, they want to go in and they want to shoot the monsters that are coming for you, or
Right. And I think that's kind of the pushback we got with our game a little bit. Some people just did not have the patience for it.
Unfortunately, those are the ones that tend to dominate the gaming field in terms of sales. But now especially, we're seeing all kinds of different niche interests that just can kind of merge for people who do want more of a story, or enjoy the interaction. Like I was surprised, even the emails, I actually felt surprisingly lifelike, the interaction where you send it and then later in the day you get a reply and then you can choose what to reply.
That stuff I didn't know about. I mean, I never knew about that until starting to do research on it. Cause like, again, I hadn't played the game. I remember, I looked at all the video footage and the film, the scenes. But it's only as I started watching people's, playthroughs and kind of getting a sense of it that I've realized how much of this was mundane office stuff you had to go through.
Yeah, unfortunately, Phantasmagoria is sort of it's like a Venn diagram where there's this tiny sliver that exists in, because there's people who want the adventure games, but then the gameplay was kind of cryptic in areas, which it kind of throw off some of them. And then at the time, the industry was getting kind of wowed by, again, more like the shooting games or more realistic graphics where you can kind of, you don't have to rely on the backdrops. You can just turn the camera yourself,
Yeah.
So it was, in retrospect, it might have been kind of doomed to receive a niche interest, but someone's going to say,
no, it's all right. It's so funny. I you and I mean, it's kind of surreal talking to you right now because we've, I've watched your videos and I've seen some of your, you have some talkbacks with your fans, and so I've got a chance to see that. But, I reached out to you. I think you and I've kind of become pen pals since March. I reached out to you back then, just before this thing started, and had seen your review, and a number of people had said, you really should reach out to Ross Scott. And so I looked you up, and you were kind enough to respond. And I think that it's been fun, using your experience to kind of figure out, how do I get into this world of sharing online?
Yeah, that was that was pretty surreal for me too, like getting an email from you, because again, in the game, you're writing to people. So it's like, oh wow, it's like I'm actually writing to Curtis. This is great.
That's funny.
No,
I want to show.
actually,
Oh, go ahead. Go
oh,
ahead.
you go. Oh, I was gonna say, it was actually a nagging down the back of my head, because I noticed you did an interview before this that I stumbled into. I think it was like last year, with somebody in Northern Europe. I forget
Yeah.
where, and I was kind of bugging me, because sometimes I do follow-ups to the videos. I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should try to reach out to Paul Morgan Stetler. That'd be pretty amazing. It's like, well, I don't know. He answered almost everything I would ask him in this interview. I don't want to just reach things. So it's great that it worked out like this.
Yeah.
And I remember what I was going to say.
I want to share something with you because
Sure, go ahead.
You may not remember this, but I guess shortly after you did your review, you ended up reaching out to me on my YouTube, my Letters Aloud YouTube channel. Just real sweet, message. I think we actually have
I didn't know how to contact you. That was the first I saw.
Right.
I was like, oh wow, I have to leave a comment. So
you probably won't be able to see this, but the screen capture says, let me see if I have it right here. You wrote, "Big fan, Phantasmagoria 2 knocked it out of the park. Good luck on your projects." And this was, you had found Letters Aloud. So I said, thanks. I was trying to create these video letters of the week. I hope you enjoy those. A far cry from the horror genre, but a lot of fun in its own right. And then you responded, and this is, I think, very much in keeping with what you were telling us about yourself. You wrote, "I heard one of the oldest correspondents in existence were these Sumerian clay tablets complaining that a merchant was a cheat and his goods were of poor quality. That one might be worth looking into for your group." And the funny thing is that I had heard about that. Oh, and I'm not sure, you'll have to probably watch the replay of this, Ross, but we're going to show the actual image of that Sumerian clay tablet,
oh, wow, okay.
which is amazing. It was written in 1750 BC. And it is one of the oldest letters of complaint ever. Apparently,
I think it might be one of the oldest correspondence ever. This is what we start history with.
Right. It's just the guy
like some merchants.
So this guy Nani, a Babylonian copper merchant, bought. He was a consumer, and he bought this copper from E.A. Nasir. And Nasir, I guess, didn't sell him very good quality copper, and was also very verbally abusive to Nani's servant. So at one point he says, "What do you take me for that you treat me with such contempt?" So I love that the very first letter is all about poor customer service. So that has remained ever since. Well, listen, I want to ask you a couple quick questions about your projects, and then I'll bring Gary on, and then you'll go away for a little bit, and I'd love you to come back and join us in a little bit. But when I first started to look at your work, Freeman's Mind, what you're doing there, and again, I'm not that up to speed on this, but I feel like, what's the line? There are no new ideas. And I feel like you found a new idea that no one else does.
Not really.
No? Well, let me just, if people don't know what it is, let me just share real quickly. What you do is that you do a first person narrative of, the first person gamer. So that in this particular game, you give thought to all of your, adventures trying to navigate a certain element of that game. And you've created a personality based on that. And it's unbelievably funny. And it really makes the game just even more dynamic to watch. So it just seems to me that you're the first person has done something like that, or is doing it in the way that you do.
It's sort of like taking an old idea and just applying it to a little bit different medium. I mean, it's the first instance I know of this is an old Woody Allen movie called What's Up, Tiger Lily?
Yeah.
Where he went and bought the rights to this kind of cheap Japanese spy movie, scrubbed all the audio, and then filled in all the lines with just this funny stuff. So I don't know what the original plot was about, but in the movie, they're trying to find the recipe to the best egg salad sandwich recipe or something like that. And then there's one scene where this bartender's trying to intimidate the guy with showing this snake like eating in a cage, and he's saying, "Oh, my snake, it's getting married to a chicken. It's like, I always cry at weddings. Like it's loaded with that stuff. And then more popularly later, a lot of people probably heard of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah, right.
Where they would, buy the rights to bad movies and then just insert dialogue constantly.
Right.
So it's very much
It's
in the
been
same
there,
vein.
but I just haven't seen anybody do it in the video
I'm
game.
not sure if I
Yeah.
was the first to do it for games or not. I still don't. I'm not aware of others who did it. Although when I first did that, I received a couple emails. One guy was annoyed because he said, like, oh, he was going to do that, but I beat him to it. And another person thought I stole the idea from him,
Of course.
which is just coincidence,
Yeah,
so
no.
it's, I mean, I did that, I want to say something like 8 years after the game came out. So there was a window there.
Yeah, yeah, really, for sure. Well, the last one that you did was just hilarious. I hope people get a chance to see it. Okay, so I think I should probably scoot a little bit. So Ross, if you don't mind, thanks again so much
no
for joining me.
problem.
It's a pleasure to chat with you. And then
Great, yeah.
I'll talk with Gary for a bit, and then I'll bring you back. And I know you've got some questions for him too. And we'll just hang tight, and we'll see you in about 30 minutes or so. Hey, there you are.
If he took
Hey.
one look at Elvis Simmons, he's probably talking to the water heater.
Actually, I was telling the chat to go watch Detroit Rock City
Good film. That's
because you kept mentioning Kiss.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Actually, that's been done. What you were describing, the switch back and forth between original and I think was it The Secret of Monkey Island had a
what a
like that. That's a
great
good soundtrack.
it's a great score and what a great script. Oh,
Is that a game?
I think they did a remake.
The Curse
where you
of
could
Monkey
just go
Island.
back.
Yes.
All right.
It's another it's from Lucasfilm, but it's the adventures of a would-be pirate named Guybrush Threepwood, and it is just the dialogue is just spectacular.
Oh, cool. I got to check that out. Gary, were you aware of the game that, or Ross, were you aware of the game that Gary mentioned?
Interstate 76?
Yeah, I played a little bit of it. I know exactly what he was talking about. I think the original game Driver has a similar soundtrack. Like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we didn't steal all your questions.
No, you stole the more broader one, so I was happy for it. Yeah, well, one thing I wanted to loop around on, one thing I definitely noticed, you're probably not the first person to do this, but I couldn't think of where else I'd seen it. You mentioned the beginning track of the apartment with the piano music, which kind of has like this somber feel to it, but still calm. And I noticed as the days progress, it's getting more and more off tone because you can tell Curtis's world is unraveling. And so by like day 5, it's just almost completely off and atonal. Was that inspired by something or it just came
No.
to you or?
No, I just thought that is the way it has to be. The
Yeah,
first one is we start tonal and things work like you expect. And then just the rules start leaving.
I love that stuff.
This simple rule is gone. It's like as simple as, okay, you can't use your left hand to eat anymore. That is the level of what the hell I was trying to do is really simple
and it's building
things.
because the day progresses. I mean, the game progresses through the week,
Yeah. I was trying to take away little things in the music, really simple resolutions that are endemic to Western sound and just not doing them. It's
yeah. In the chat, you're making it sound, well, I mean, maybe this is how much you were thinking about it consciously, but you're making it sound so simple. However, and from a certain perspective, it is. However, the emotions, it's just, you nail it so well that it produces these feelings that just, it has this sort of majesty to it that even if it's meant to be simple, it's a beautiful weaving, you know what I mean?
Thank you.
Like actually one of the tunes that always pops up in my head thinking about the game is just the map music, and it's just a few notes,
Oh yeah.
Oh, the map music. Yeah. Well, it's funny. One person is, I think I've had more than one person say to me that they have played, I think it's mostly the music in Curtis's apartment. They would have that as something sort of as mood music. They would just have that play in the background as they were working or whatever. There was something about that really connected to them. So, you know, as Ross said, you know,
Well, that's more telling of them. I mean, it's like,
but
hey,
what
this
you
is
do
this
is
is
It's a
calming
simple
music,
mind,
but
simple pleasures. Huh?
something.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what I was saying is deeper than that. Really, you know, that means their world is basically correct with something wrong,
Mhm, mhm.
and that tells me
You-
that something is wrong in their life, and
You know, you
they're
mentioned
connecting
that.
with it.
I actually found when you guys were talking about, I actually found parts of like the day one piano music and in the cubicles, like the background element kind of comforting on a level. Like, so
It is.
yeah,
It
maybe
really is.
maybe that's some psychoanalysis
That
on
is
my end that you're
precisely well,
tapping into.
like I said, I was trying to convey simple one-word emotions. You know, serene,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
happy
mean,
memory.
it's more mixed in there
Fuck.
with that, but
You well, it's funny because I always think about like you know, you created a sort of a creative box within you had to work in, and it was, you know, you couldn't get outside that box, and so you made this decision that you were going to, you know, create a mood for each room, and that each, you know, as the game progresses or as you get to these different places, you know, as you said, you said it was you were taking a hammer to it, but that's the box you created. But what I think what Ross is saying is that within that you couldn't help but utilize your creative, you know, curiosity to find levels within all that to make it work, you know, and that's what I think people are responding to.
And that was essentially my job, in my opinion. The way that it worked is, like I said, I was giving up the farm. I knew what the resolution of that section of the game was going to be. And beforehand, but the player didn't. What I was doing is composing for that resolution, and that music will make sense when you get there.
Mhm, mhm.
That was the
Yeah.
whole point.
I was also gonna say you almost might be overthinking it because
Of course I
you're coming
am.
from a music, yeah. You're coming from a music background. The player is playing this and they just finding themselves liking this mood, you know, or wow, this really fits, or they're making it tense. So it's as blunt as you're saying it is, it it really works. In fact, a pet peeve of mine is soundtracks that aren't very distinctive. And so I really appreciate when a score has like a real solid theme and like, you know, it gets into your head rather than just, I've compared to some soundtracks, it sounds like there's something good playing, but it's in the next room. You know, I've heard where it's just not very well defined and they want it more as like a ambience, but not too
The
kind of
funny
watery.
thing, you mentioned the theme. One of the things that I thought was a bit of a failure on the game was the main theme. And I never played the whole theme completely until the end of the game when it was all revealed. That was probably a mistake. You know, I kept putting a few notes of the theme on there. I kept putting, you know, hinting at the main theme. Maybe I should have just used the main theme a little more. You know, I was doing simple leitmotifs, but the resolution of the game, I was toying with it constantly and never really presented it as a whole.
This is great. This ties directly into one of my next questions is I would actually, you're talking about the main theme. I would agree that out of the soundtrack, that's maybe not the strongest part. Like actually my favorite part was probably the portal room. Once you first enter it, it just has this kind of otherworldly feel to it. And again, kind of hopeful almost like,
Yeah,
just
that's what I was
alien,
going for.
but hopeful.
Like I said,
and you
I
do
was
this-
switching from no to maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
that curiosity is like, is this where I'm actually supposed to go? It's okay.
I think you mentioned that you had, it was like the chord. It sounds almost like pressure releasing from a valve in the background, like shh, like while in the middle of the theme. But one thing I thought was great about the theme, so I would push back against you saying you should have used it more, is I was going to ask if that was your idea or the directors. Where there's the menu music when you first open the game, like doo-doo-dee, it's kind of hazy, you know, and then you finally hear it again in Dimension X with that energy column. And I thought that was almost genius, because I thought like, oh, now it's all coming back. This is what it was all about. Like, oh, this is fantastic. So I think for me, I thought that really stood out to me when I played it, that you hadn't used that theme. And then now we're bringing it out. So it's like, yeah, now you get it. So, that kind of elevated it. So that's not necessarily my favorite part, but the way it was used, I love that. So
Thank you. That was absolutely conscious.
great.
Yeah,
Well,
that was what we call in hockey a dangle. That was
So-
something to get your interest while I spun around the other side and took a shot on net.
yeah, well, that's
So Gary, when I reached out to Andy Hoyos a while back, and we're trying to get him to come on a little later, and we chatted a little bit, and when I mentioned I was bringing you on, the only thing we were talking about other things, but I got the sense that he didn't give you, he just trusted you and let you pretty much do was there a lot of interaction between you and him that you remember?
Almost none.
Yeah, I think that he said the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically he was reviewing everything. He was sitting there while I was laying in the music with Wes and, stuff like that. And he was just like, yep. And he started paying less and less attention to me because I guess I was just,
you did what he wanted.
I was hitting doubles, you know, you don't mess with the batter when he's hitting doubles.
Right. All right. Well, listen, I want to share this. So I'm going to share two quick scenes with you guys, and I just love both your takes on it. The first one is when Curtis is at the Dreaming Tree with Jocelyn, and he sees his doppelganger for the first time. And before I show that, the question did you also do sound design on the game?
The in-game sound design I did.
So everything like the chains going over did you do all the?
Well, all the stuff that's actually on full motion video that was done over at Clatter and Din.
Oh yeah.
But the stuff like the very simple UI stuff and the interactions with things in your cubicles, that was me.
Oh wow,
I was there to make
sound design in that game too. There's some really
like
cool
I
stuff.
said, my first shot, and in retrospect, it turns out that I'm really, really good at sound design.
Yeah.
I mean, I've made a career out of it.
Yeah. Well, let me play this for you guys. Let me see tell me what you think of it. Because there's a really cool, it turns very, very, anyways, I'll shut up and play.
Kill that slut. Kill him like you killed your mother.
So much going on in that moment, musically.
I always knew that there was going to be straight quarter notes whenever the hecatomb was about. And that does not come from Flash Gordon. That comes more from Front 242. And when he was on screen, it was straight KMFDM, but that was, like I said, I was just establishing tension with a simple minor second in the strings, and started and whenever we had something supernatural, I had this great patch on the Corgo 3R that had that singy thing and the bells coming in after it. And man, it sounded good, and I used the shit out.
Yeah, you did.
Thing.
Is that the part that came at the very end? That it almost sounds like
I remember that a few
sounds
times.
like voices, right? Almost.
That's one big part of my composition is use of human voice as an instrument.
Yeah.
I just fill it out like it was a keyboard patch, and is one of the most useful things. I use that to this day in my composition.
Yeah.
It reminds me another horror soundtrack that a little bit different. I think it was Carter Burwell did the soundtrack to Blair Witch 2, and I heard that for all of his instruments, he just went out to the forest and just recorded everything, like rocks banging together, water, leaves rustling, sticks, and then that was his sound. Those were his instruments for his soundtrack.
I have a story. 10cc. The guys who did I'm Not in Love, so then forget it. that sound, that choir sound behind him, what they did, this is absolute engineering gold, is they had a 24 track available to them, and all four guys in the band would sing one note. Say C. They would stop that and they would sing D. 24 tracks, that's 2 octaves. And they did an entire keyboard of people going, and so they turned up certain notes when they needed them. That's how they got that incredible sound.
Wow.
So it was literally a voice organ. And that is the kind of crap that I love.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just watched the McCartney 3-2-1 on Hulu with him and Rick Rubin, just at a mixing board, and just talking about music and isolating all the tracks. And it's, as a non-musical person, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And in hearing you guys talk about all the different layers underneath, it's just what a wonderful way to.
If I may, I would have killed to listen to Rick Rubin tear open tracks.
Yeah.
But there's a YouTuber that I really dig. His name is Rick Beato, and he does a series that I just love called What Makes This Song Great.
Yeah.
And he will pull out certain hooks. He will pull out little pieces of composition. I mean, every once in a while, just for fun, I take a deep dive on the construction of Africa by Toto, and I always find something new that I didn't notice, little suspensions and shit.
Yeah.
You know, and Beato is really great about that. He really gets to the kernel of a lot of songs.
That's awesome. All right, I'm going to play this. I'm going to play the Therese death scene. So, for those of you who have never seen this game, Therese dies pretty horrifically, but you get to. I want to hear the sound that goes with it. And what also someone wrote on our stream right now, asking about the Mortal Kombat music in the Bondage Club. Does that?
I didn't. There was no Mortal Kombat.
Oh, okay.
That was all me.
Okay, it was all you. But so the background music, that whatever was playing in the club that we heard, that was your arrangement.
Absolutely, yes.
So I think we'll hear a teeny bit of this, but it's really I've cut it, so we're just going to pretty much hear Therese's death. But it really gets pretty. There's a real incredible drive to this. Let's watch it. That's the background music there.
Yeah, that seems it.
Hello? Come on. Who's there?
So the hard part is it's hard to get past the imagery because it's so intense. But then when you really, I was tempted to just play the audio so we didn't have to watch it as well, because it really it just goes bonkers. And just there's so much going on with the club music, the sound design of everything that's happening in that room, and then this bum 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 bum, and then it's just taking off. So anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, both of you.
What you're hearing is first of all, is always the sign the hecatomb is coming and something is about to get fucked up. And with that, there's a strong relationship between the kind of fetish scene and bands like Lords of Acid, you know, which has a really high speed techno feel. And that I was crossing that with my love of metal, going to double kick, you know, but it was a lot of Lords of Acid. And you can hear me just do a basic 1 flat 5 and a basic tritone a couple times back and forth, and then set up a key center, do the same thing. But I was just going for this discordant, violent yet and just berserk
Mhm.
sound that was still kind of like, we're at a dance club and we're thrashing it up and we're dying horribly.
Yeah, to the point that the people outside the door, feel like, oh, there's just something fun going on in there, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you heard that kind of Lords of Acid sound, yeah, you shouldn't go in there. They're having fun.
Yeah, you mentioned the bluntness. Now that you mention it, I realize, oh, that's right. All the murders, yeah, those hit you like an axe with the bluntness.
Mhm.
So,
And if
'cause
there's
it's
one thing
like
I'm
you
good
said,
at, it's
you go
bluntness.
you go from calm to just full force for all the deaths. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Well, Eddie, I mean, I'm going to probably move on to some live Q&A. So anybody that is wanting to ask Gary a few questions, what's that? And then, but I have a question for you, both you and Gary, Ross, before you head out. And thank you so much for joining us for this and being a part of this and just helping me from the beginning. I can't thank you enough. But I'm curious what you guys, I'm planning on continuing through the end of the year, and then we'll see what happens beyond that. I've got a bunch of ideas. There's so many different people that worked on this and so many different people that I could interview, but I'd be curious, like outside of some of the biggies, Lorelai, Andy, people like that, I'd love to know your thoughts. Who would you love to hear from that might be or that you worked with, Gary, that you think would be a great person to chat with, or Ross, just, in terms of your,
If you can get a hold of Wes Plate,
yeah, I was thinking Wes.
Wes was like the focal point of all of this. He was the one actually putting everything together.
Yeah.
And just from a production standpoint, much less the fabulous job he did putting things together.
Yeah.
Man, I'd like to hear about him. And he's like, you want me to do what?
Yeah, right. Wes is the editor of the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Ross? Anything you'd be interested in hearing?
I mean, you're checking off so many boxes as it is. I mean, I think it's great at getting to talk to you and the composer. And
Yeah.
I mean, like you mentioned, Lord Lay and the director and a lot of the cast. So, I mean, there's not a lot of, you're not missing much, from my perspective.
Yeah, there's some, I really wanted to talk with Matt Jensen, who was the DP. And it was, I think I'm convinced it was one of his first jobs. And now he's like a huge, he just did Wonder Woman 4. He's
oh, really? That's
he's
excellent.
big time now. Yeah, he's doing great. And I reached out to him and he was kind enough to get back, but for various reasons, he gave me a tentative no. He gave me a pretty definite no, but I'm going to still nudge him again. But I guess, I don't know if you knew this, Gary, but I guess there was a lawsuit with the crew and Sierra. I think that there was some, I don't know all the details, but I know that crew worked crazy hours, and I don't think they were union. And so I think there was
that's the kicker right there, is the video game industry and the film industry. One of the reasons that they don't really mix all that well is because of the unions.
Mm-hmm.
Video games, well, let's put it this way. What I went through at Treyarch was 100-hour weeks from February to October, with under 10 days off during that period. I was expected every waking moment to be in my chair.
We're glad you're still alive, Gary.
So am I. I was hospitalized twice.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. But anyway, the thing is, the film unions would never put up with that shit.
Yeah.
And the hammer would come down really fast. And there's still a Wild West aspect of the games industry where the big publishers frankly use us.
Yeah.
It's been a problem for a really long time, and you can see it with what's happening with Activision right now.
Yeah. There's some stuff going down. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to scoot on. Ross, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And everybody, I'm sure all of my followers know who you are, but if you haven't seen Ross's work, please go to Accursed Farms YouTube channel or his website. Yeah. And there's some great stuff there, and it's just really, really fun stuff to go. I can't wait for your next. What's coming up next? What can we expect from you before
time travel?
Time travel. Okay, that's good. Looking forward to it. All right. Well, thank you, Ross.